the modern day Tea Party movement started in 2009, and we went through until December of 2010, and we formally applied for our 501c4 and 501c3 status in December of 2010. And when we did that, we knew, even as we were applying in December of 2010, we were already hearing from groups around the country, from a few groups who were saying it wasn't happening quickly enough. And our attorneys were saying, we're hearing this as well, that it's taking much longer than it had taken before. And so we applied knowing that it might take maybe 6 months instead of 3 weeks or 3 months. And waited and waited and waited and heard nothing at all in all of 2010 from the IRS. And then unless our attorneys called them, in which case they either didn't even return phone calls or just said, yes, we have your application and you'll hear from us soon. And that was it. So then nothing from them in 2011. In 2012, as the healthcare law was being heard at the Supreme Court, we had received letters from them asking all sorts of questions. And other groups around the country, because our group serves as a group that supports other groups around the country, and we do all we can to support these other groups. And in fact, we have Tom from Cincinnati, Ohio in here. His group was one that was targeted. And he's from Cincinnati, and that's where the IRS office is, that they claim was only just this one office who was in charge. It had nothing to do with anyone in D.C. whatsoever. So we had all these questions, and the questions are things like, what's on your Facebook page? And they didn't want just what's on your Facebook page, they wanted hard copy printouts of everything on our Facebook page. And our question back to the IRS is exactly what do you mean by that? Do you mean you want what we posted on our Facebook page, or do you want every single comment of every single person who posted on our Facebook page? Do you want to know every person who's liked us on our Facebook page? At which point does this stop? There was no clarity in some of the questions that they were asking. And in other groups around the country, we're getting similar questions. And in fact, in Cincinnati, or the Cincinnati area, there was a man named Justin Bennett Thomas, who one of the questions that the IRS sent to a local group in Ohio, in a different part of Ohio, asked about Justin by name. How did they even know Justin's name, much less why were they asking specifically about him by name? And so we would work as an organization doing the things that we did, protesting in front of the Supreme Court, sending email alerts out, encouraging people to call their members of Congress. And then in the evenings and on weekends, we were working with attorneys and accountants and pulling the mountains and volumes of paper for the IRS to get it to them. And we continued to wait. Lois Lerner admitted that she was indeed targeting. Now, in 2012, it's important to note that in 2012, the IRS, under oath before Congress, under the threat or penalty of perjury, said there was no targeting going on at all. And then in May of 2013, we hear on a conference call, press conference from Lois Lerner, that there was targeting of groups with Tea Party and Patriots and 9/12 in their names, among other things. And we learned later that groups that wanted to, quote, make America a better place were being targeted, or teaching about the Constitution, which Kevin will talk to you about in just a moment. All of this happened, well then in July of last year, and remember that was already over 2 years from when we applied, we received a letter from the IRS saying they were offering us expedited review. It had been over 2 years and they were going to offer us expedited review. As we all know, it's Orwellian language. What they really mean is, since it's already taking you so long, we'll give you some more paperwork to fill out. And in that, they wanted us to say that we would agree to a lower amount of what we were legally allowed to do than groups who already had their status. So because we were targeted, we were going to be held to a different law than the groups who were not. So we refused that, and then we got another round of questions from them. So they've admitted it, Congress is investigating them, and the IRS continued. And so we had to go through and get even more paperwork and information for them last year. Finally, last week, the day before I testified, the day before the comment period for the IRS, for the regulations that Cleta was talking about ended, and the day before our 5-year anniversary, all of those events happened on the same day. The day before, not even the day before, hours before, less than 24 hours, we received a call from the IRS to one of our attorneys saying that we were approved and that we'd be getting our paperwork shortly. I wonder if that means 3 more years till we get our paperwork. So it goes on, it still goes on. And we're supposed to think that the day before I testified, receiving a call from the IRS that we were approved, that there's nothing political is going on behind the scenes with the IRS, and that there's no corruption whatsoever.
Yeah, Jenny, once again, an unbelievable story, and in fact, I tend to wonder, you have the IRS looking into what kind of work they're doing, but then we also heard stories about certain religious groups where they're asking them the content of their prayers. Are we going into, say, First Amendment violations here now?
We are, and you'll notice also if you look at Daryl Ice's Twitter feed from yesterday, he has letters or emails and some of the evidence that the committee has received. And one of the things that was in it is that they were also targeting, there are 3 groups that they were looking at who were involved in Israel. So 3 pro-Israel groups, and it says 3 groups who were concerned about settlements in Israel. So it continues, it wasn't just Tea Party groups, they were infringing on everything within the First Amendment, and the new things that they do, while what was happening with us through the IRS did not hit on the free press, the new regulations would. Any comment that anyone in a 501c4 organization makes to the media 30 days before primary or 60 days before an election about a sitting member of Congress would have to be counted as political activity, and we would have to assign a value to the quote in the